So there it is. You heard the finance minister once again in an exclusive interview, giving the details out there, responding to all the questions, trying to explain the finer nuances of the budget. And we will here continue the discussion as far as all other aspects of the budget are. And for the next at least 2.5 hours, we'll take them sector by sector. We'll look at all the important sectors, be it infrastructure, manufacturing, health, rural development, agriculture, and of course, the other aspects as well. I am Vishal Dahiya, and with me is my colleague Tina.
बिल्कुल, तो जैसा कि मेरे सहयोगी विशाल ने कहा, वित्त मंत्री निर्मला सीतारमण ने जो आज वित्त वर्ष 2021-22 का बजट पेश किया, उसके जरिए उन्होंने एक तरह से देखें तो न्यू इंडिया का खाका देश के समक्ष रखा है और कोरोना महामारी की पृष्ठभूमि में एक अभूतपूर्व बजट पेश करते हुए निर्मला सीतारमण ने खास करके हेल्थ केयर सेक्टर और इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में निवेश के जरिए रोजगार सृजन पर भी खासा जोर दिया है। तो सेक्टर बाय सेक्टर, जैसा कि मेरे सहयोगी ने कहा, इस पर हम चर्चा करेंगे। हमारे साथ कुछ एक्सपर्ट्स जुड़ रहे हैं फिलहाल हमारे साथ कार्यक्रम में इस पर चर्चा करने के लिए। तो शुरुआत विशाल हेल्थ केयर सेक्टर से करते हैं।
Definitely we can start with healthcare, but since we have both Hindol and Gautam Chickermanne as well, let me first introduce both of them. Hindol Sen Gupta, Vice President Invest India, is with us. We also have Gautam Chickermanne, Vice President Observer Research Foundation, with us. Before we jump on to health, Tina, let's take an overview from both of them on the infrastructure sector as well, since we plan to do that earlier, and we'll look at the other part when we're talking about manufacturing as well. But let me bring in Gautam here, Mr. Chickermanne, from your perspective as far as infrastructure is concerned, before we jump on to health. From the point of view of putting more focus there on the infrastructure, there are quite a number of things which have been done in the budget. If you could just sum up for our viewers for the infra there.
In fact, I think this is an infrastructure budget, and this was expected. The focus on infrastructure was expected, and Nirmala Sitharaman ji has delivered on those expectations. A 34.5% jump in infrastructure spending, 5 lakh crore, for 2 lakh crore for another for the states, most of them in capital projects, is as a clear indication that this government is very serious on delivering good quality infrastructure. Also using infrastructure as an enabler of GDP growth, economic recovery, and jobs.
Okay.
For instance, if you look at railways, 1 lakh crore is going to go in railway infrastructure. This will create a whole lot of jobs in the sector. Riding this infrastructure will be private companies. So I would assume that it is not just the government spending on infrastructure alone that is going to deliver the goods. It is equally the private sector that will then start riding, and which currently has been holding its investments back and will start putting investments. So I see the public investment in infrastructure, particularly capital investments in infrastructure, as a kickoff, as a kicker for private sector investments in infrastructure or related fields to follow. In my opinion, it will take about a quarter or two for the private sector investments to get back. I think this is the best thing that this budget has delivered. It will deliver growth, it will deliver GDP, it will deliver jobs.
Okay. Okay. Hindol, I'd like to bring you in here, and when we're talking about this particular sector, as Gautam Chickermanne is saying, if we look at the other aspect here as well, there seems to be a big thrust on monetizing assets as well. There is a national monetization pipeline which will be launched. So how do you believe monetizing of assets is going to help not only the infra sector but the overall economy there?
Look, at the end of the day, if you really look at this budget, it is in a sense a new deal for India. There are, in the New Deal in America, we spoke about 3 R's. Economists have traditionally spoken about 3 R's: reform, recovery, and relief. Reform, recovery, and relief are all 3 aspects of this critical budget. And as far as asset monetization is concerned, you can clearly see that the government now wants to take a hard look at the assets it owns. And we were just listening to the finance minister just before this show began, and she said that we want to take a middle path and we want to take a sensible attitude towards our assets, towards the monetization that we do, including including the sale of banks and other assets. And she wants to take a middle path in understanding and actually monetizing all of these things. So this part, this reform that many people in the past may have thought was a little difficult to do, seems to have been the big, bold step. And we can see that at every layer of this budget. And I think this augurs well for the future of India, for the future of its economy, because at the end of the day, what the government is essentially saying is that we don't want to take any knee-jerk action. That's what we heard the finance minister say.
Okay.
We will not do a knee-jerk action of any kind. So while we will not, have a knee-jerk rollout of stimulus, but we will also not have a knee-jerk hold back, so to speak. We want to respond step by step, as even the economic survey suggested, depending on the ground situation. And indeed, the government, in order to do these big reform projects, to provide the kind of relief it wants, to provide the kind of healthcare it wants, to build the kind of infrastructure it wants, all these ambitious projects need money. And where will that money come from? Mm-hmm. Well, of course, one of the key pillars is to take the assets that it has and deploy them better in order to raise the funds, which clearly seems to be a message that the finance minister and indeed the government is doing, which makes perfect sense because this is the only way to balance if you want to build a budget and a future based upon the three things that India needs the most, as I was saying, in a New Deal sort of way: reform, relief, rehabilitation after in the post-COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay.
गौतम चिकरमणि जी, एक बार फिर से आपके पास आऊंगी क्योंकि हम इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर फाइनेंसिंग, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर ट्रस्ट की बात कर रहे हैं सरकार की तरफ से। तो एक और अहम बात जो बजट में देखने को मिली वो है सेटिंग अप ऑफ अ डेवलपमेंट फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन। बुनियादी ढांचे के निर्माण और अर्थव्यवस्था को पुनर्जीवित करने के लिहाज से अगर देखें तो इस इंस्टीट्यूट की क्या भूमिका रहेगी?
मेरे विचार में आई विल जस्ट कम टू दिस, लेकिन जो प्रीवियस पॉइंट था जो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर का और जो हिंडोल ने अभी एक्सप्रेस किया, अगर आप देखें कि ये जो लॉन्ग टर्म स्ट्रैटेजी है, ये ऐसी नीति नहीं है कि आज ही इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पे लगाएंगी। फॉर इंस्टेंस पावर डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन के लिए 3 लाख करोड़ इन्होंने आउटले बनाया है, जो कि अगले 5 साल तक होगा। तो इन्होंने इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को ना ही इस बजट के अंदर डाला है, अगले 4-5 बजट्स तक भी उसको सील कर दिया है। तो ये लॉन्ग टर्म स्ट्रैटेजी है। रही बात डेवलपमेंट फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन की, इन माय ओपिनियन, मेरे विचार में ये बहुत ही बुरा आइडिया है। बुरा इसलिए नहीं कि वो कुछ करेगा या ना करेगा। आइडिया, इस आइडिया के पीछे जो उनकी चाह है, जो एस्पिरेशन है कि वो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर फाइनेंस हो, करेक्ट दिशा है, ठीक बात है। मगर एक नया इंस्टीट्यूशन, डेवलपमेंट फाइनेंस इंस्टीट्यूशन खोलना, वी आर गोइंग बैक टू, हम तो वापस 1940s, 50s, 60s पे पहुंच गए, जब हमने IFCI, ICICI, IDBI बनाया था। उनका कुछ देर चला था, बाद में वो उनको बंद किया गया, उनको बैंक्स बनाया गया। आज हमारे पास पब्लिक सेक्टर बैंक्स हैं, उन्हीं के अंदर अगर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर रिलेटेड फाइनेंसिंग या डिविजन्स खोले जाएं, वो उतना ही काबिल रहता। एक नया ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, वो भी डेवलपमेंट फाइनेंस इंस्टीट्यूशन, जिसको हमने खत्म कर दिए हैं, अब हम इसका प्रयोग ही नहीं रहा। एक नया बनाना मुझे तो खास कुछ लग नहीं रहा। इसमें कितना आगे जाएगा मैं जानता नहीं। 5 लाख करोड़ का इनका एस्पिरेशन है कि ये डेट देंगे इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर प्रोजेक्ट्स को। मेरे विचार में ये ज़्यादा चलने वाला नहीं है। मुझे लगता है ये किसी ब्यूरोक्रेट्स के लिए साइनेक्योर बनाया गया है।
Okay. Perhaps we'll have to keep a watch on that aspect there, Tina, which Mr. Chickermani is pointing out. But Mr. Chickermani, I'd like to bring you back on a related aspect here when we are looking at infrastructure, and that is a bit of more focus on the public-private partnership, the PPP model, and that seems to be in a lot of focus in the urban infrastructure landscape there. When we're talking about metro train corridors or buses specifically, public transport buses there, even in railways there, if you look at. So looks like there is a renewed focus on PPP when we talk about infrastructure.
You're absolutely right, and this renewed focus is very good for the economy. It brings the stakes of the private sector into the national discourse, as in if there is a freight corridor being built of which the government is financing part of it and the private sector comes and joins it, it's very good. It has been done very successfully in roads, and it should expand. There is only one problem with it, or I'm sure it will get, it's not really a problem, it's a minor hurdle. The way PPPs happened in the previous dispensation, it raised a lot of questions about who was getting the contract and what terms, L1, non-L1, high technology, and so on. I believe we are yet to see the details of this policy. Prima facie, it looks very good.
Okay.
But it's only when we read those proper contracts and see the various kinds of relationships, the constraints, See, the problem with PPP is you want the private sector to deliver a public good under the conditions of a public sector. That's not possible. You are getting a private sector to do dynamism, to take risks, to leverage positions, to use cutting-edge technology, to bring in efficiency into the project. If you are going to bind that PPP model, and which means the private sector person, and convert it into a public sector model of checks and balance. I'm not saying checks and balances should not be there. They should be there. But right down to micro checks and balances, the PPP model is really, a public sector with some private contractors.
Okay.
For PPPs to function best, private sector needs to be given the freedom to use their resources, their knowledge, their dynamism, without going through circular permissions here and there. If Nirmala Sitharaman and the government can deliver this, I think this is a great idea.
Okay, bit more elbow room for the private players there, as Mr. Chickamani is pointing out. Tina.
बिल्कुल विशाल, तो हेल्थ सेक्टर पर बढ़े उससे पहले हिंडल सेन गुप्ता जी, आपसे एक प्रतिक्रिया ले लेते हैं पीपीपी मॉडल पर भी और डेवलपमेंट फाइनेंशियल इंस्टीट्यूशन पर भी। गौतम जी कह रहे हैं कि डीएफआई इज अ बैड आइडिया, शायद ये हमें वापस ले जाता है 1940s की तरफ, और अभी फिलहाल हम शायद उस स्टेज में नहीं है जब इसकी ज़रूरत लग रही है। दोनों ही बातों पर आपकी क्या राय है?
देखिए, मेरा राय ये है कि हमने पहले भी देखा है कि गवर्नमेंट की जो राय है वो है इंस्टीट्यूशन बिल्डिंग की तरफ। नाउ ये इंस्टीट्यूशन आगे जाके कैसे फंक्शन करेगी ये हम अभी नहीं कह सकते, पर इंस्टीट्यूशन बिल्डिंग, इंस्टीट्यूशंस इंडिया को चाहिए, और इंस्टीट्यूशंस बिल्डिंग एक गवर्नमेंट के की रोल है। तो इसका ये फुलफिलमेंट जो है वो हम देखते हैं ऐसे प्रपोजल्स में जो एक इंस्टीट्यूशन बिल्ड करेंगे कंट्री के लिए। अब आगे जाके इसका कैसे किस लेवल पे एप्लीकेशन होगा, इसमें कैसे फंक्शनैलिटीज़ होंगे, ये हम सिर्फ आगे जाके बता पाएंगे। एट द मोमेंट ये बताना मुश्किल है। और जहाँ तक पीपीपी मॉडल का क्वेश्चन है, देखिए ये एक मॉडल कई तरह से मॉडल्स इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में यूज़ हुआ है। जैसे एक बीच में था एक बीओटी, बिल्ड ऑपरेट एंड ट्रांसफ़र का एक ज़माना आया था, तो बहुत बिल्ड ऑपरेट एंड ट्रांसफ़र की लोग बात करते थे। तो ये मॉडल्स, मुझे लगता है कई सारे मॉडल्स का ट्रायल एंड टेस्ट रन चल रहा है। पर ओवरआर्चिंगली अगर आप देखें तो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, जैसे गौतम जी कह रहे थे, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पे जो एक पुश है, जो एक रिन्यूड विगर है इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की तरफ, वो फंडामेंटली एक पॉजिटिव साइन है।
Okay, indeed, those are the positive signs there. Stay with us, Mr. Hindol, as well as Mr. Chickamani. We also have with us Ms. Urvashi Prasad, Public Policy Specialist from Niti Aayog, looking after health. And let's jump on to health now, Tina. Ms. Prasad, the figure says 2,23,846 crore rupees outlay for the health sector, which is an increase of more than 137%. That indeed seems to be the kind of jump which all of us have been talking about in the past few months. Now the question is it enough, and how will it be working specifically on the ground?
Yes, so even before the pandemic, I think we were very clear that the health sector is one which has been underfunded for many decades. It's not just about a few years. And therefore was a sector which was in dire need of an increase in funding. Now, of course, the pandemic has sort of increased that need because the health system has got a setback in other ways as well, even though India has managed the pandemic relatively much better. But nevertheless, it has stressed the health system in different ways. So I think this increase has come at a very, very important time. But as the finance minister said, that, this number needs to go up even further, because, when we talk of the 137% increase, we must remember that this is an increase on a fairly low base. The starting base is pretty low. So this number will need to go up even further. But as she said, that, once the system's capacity to absorb funds, to spend funds in the right manner increases, that is when we will see this allocation go up even further. So I think that is a very, very important point, and that's an encouragement for the future, that, this number will continue to increase. Of course, states need to do much the same. When we talk of health spending, we often get limited to the center, but the 15th Finance Commission report, which was also tabled, that says very clearly that, state governments also need to increase their expenditure to at least 8% of their budget. So hopefully we'll see that happening as well. But to the second point of your question on, how will it be spent or how will it work on the ground? I think there were some very important areas the finance minister highlighted in her speech. One was strengthening different aspects of the public health system, right from laboratories to hospitals to medical colleges. So it's a broad canvas, and she touched upon many of these aspects which need to be strengthened. She also spoke about the vaccines, apart from the COVID vaccine. She spoke about the pneumococcal vaccine, which is a very important part of, public health. We have many deaths due to diseases like pneumonia and diarrhea. So we've had vaccines like rotavirus and pneumococcal being introduced. So far, the pneumococcal vaccine was limited to around 5 states. But now, as she pointed out, it's going to be rolled out across the country. So that could save as many as 50,000 lives every year. So I think that was a very important announcement on, public and preventive healthcare. And the third piece, the final piece, which, struck me, was on the human resources. She mentioned the allied professionals bill. She mentioned the nursing and midwifery bill, because it's very important that it's not just about physical infrastructure in health, but we also need to strengthen our human resource capacity. And the fact that she pointed out these two cadres, which will be crucial as we go ahead, was another very encouraging point. So I think there were several positives from the announcements related to the health sector today.
बिल्कुल, कई सारे पॉजिटिव्स गौतम जी जिस तरह से बता रही हैं उर्वशी जी कि एक्सपेक्टेड था कि कोरोना महामारी के बाद हेल्थ केयर पे काफ़ी फोकस रहेगा सरकार का, और अब हम देख रहे हैं जिस तरह से 137% की बढ़ोतरी की गई है बजटरी एलोकेशन में। लेकिन अब सबसे बड़ा चैलेंज देखें तो हेल्थ सेक्टर में सुधार लाने के लिए वो कौन से स्पेसिफिक एरियाज हैं जिनमें अब सरकार को काम करना पड़ेगा, ताकि जो हमने लेसन्स जो सबक लिए हैं कोरोना महामारी के दौरान उनसे सीखते हुए आगे आने वाले समय में इस तरह की सिचुएशन ना हो, और वी आर एबल टू स्ट्रेंथन आवर हेल्थ केयर सेक्टर।
कहना बड़ा मुश्किल है, क्योंकि ऐसा नहीं है कि ये जो कोविड वायरस है ये कोई प्लान्ड प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, ये ब्लैक स्वॉन इवेंट था, हम जानते भी नहीं थे, अचानक हमें अटैक कर गया। ये रोज़मर्रा की प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, ये एक आउट ऑफ द ब्लू है, ये बहुत बड़ा एक सडन शॉक है। इसके लिए कोई प्लानिंग करना असंभव है मेरे विचार में। हैविंग सेड दैट, मुझे लगता है कि जिस तरीके से इंडियन फार्मास्यूटिकल कंपनीज ने और जिस तरीके से हमारी पॉलिसीज़ ने इंडिया को अब कटिंग एज पे डाल दिया, जहाँ पे हम अपना नॉट ओनली अपने लिए लेकिन विदेश के अपने नेबरहुड में या बाकी देश जो मांगना शुरू कर रहे हैं, उनको वैक्सीन्स देना शुरू कर रहे हैं। ये दिखाता है कि हमारे में कितनी एबिलिटी, कितनी एजिलिटी है कि जब व्हेन पुश कम्स टू शव, जब हम किसी कोने में हो जाते हैं, तो भारत के जो सरकार की, सिर्फ सरकार की बात नहीं कर रहा हूँ, भारत के साइंटिस्ट, उनके मैन्युफैक्चरर्स, बिजनेसेस, सब दे ऑल राइज टू द ओकेजन। और ये वैक्सीन जो है ये उसका एक बहुत ही बढ़िया एक एग्जाम्पल है। लेकिन अगर हेल्थ केयर के अंदर आपको आगे जाना है, मुझे लगता है आयुष्मान भारत जो स्कीम जो चल रही है उसको चलाते रहना चाहिए। उसके अंदर जो इंश्योरेंस वाला पार्ट है, फॉर इंस्टेंस, उस इंश्योरेंस को जो कि इस वक्त पुअरेस्ट 100 मिलियन लोगों को दिया जाता है फ्री में, उसी कंडीशंस को 5 लाख का जो है वो सरकार अगर जो पैसे दे सकते हैं उनसे लेके एक बेसिक इंश्योरेंस, यू कैन कॉल इट द बेयर मिनिमम इंश्योरेंस, जो कि सबके लिए हो, सिर्फ 100 मिलियन पुअर के लिए नहीं, सभी के लिए हो। और ये सरकार को पैसे देने की ज़रूरत नहीं है, ये जो पे कर सकते हैं वो खुद दें, हम लें, आप लें, हम सब इसका प्रयोग करें, क्योंकि जो हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस है वो थोड़ा मार्केट फेलियर चल रहा है उस मार्केट के अंदर, हेल्थ केयर प्लस हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस। मुझे लगता है आत्मनिर्भर भारत, आयुष्मान भारत जो एक स्कीम चली है, इससे दोनों चीजें ठीक कर सकते हैं। तो अगर हमें आगे बढ़ना है, आयुष्मान भारत को और स्ट्रॉन्ग करना है।
Okay. Hindol, I'd like to bring you in here on one part, as far as the health sector is concerned, and something which Urvashi also elaborated upon, that is the new centrally sponsored scheme which has been announced, that is PM Atmanirbhar Swasth Bharat Yojana, and the outlay is around 64,180 crore rupees. The focus areas in this scheme are quite interesting and quite important as well, as Urvashi was saying. Research, critical care, as well as building integrated health information portal as well. These are the areas which perhaps were not being addressed in such a collated manner earlier in either of the schemes.
Absolutely. Now, what I would request and urge you to do is to consider the following. If you read last year's economic survey, and if you look at the past budget, and you read this year's economic survey, and then, of course, hear what the finance minister had to say, you have to put all of this in context. Last year's economic survey spoke about triggering wealth at the grassroots. This year's economic survey quoted that and said that we need a framework of what it called bare necessities, right? Now, when you say bare necessities, it's very obvious that we are talking about things like health and education and R&D, basic strengthening. It's all very well for people to say that other people should compete, but you have to give them the ecosystem to compete. See, when liberalization happened in India in 1991, we of course got a huge spurt in our growth. But one of the things we did not do adequately at that time was strengthen these bare necessities. And I think it's a very welcome move to strengthen these bare necessities, because at the end of the day, I really like the fact that, and I was just saying this to somebody else before I came here, when you compare and combine Atmanirbhar with Swasth, this is a very important coupling, so to speak.
Okay.
You're saying that self-reliance fundamentally needs good health of the people who will become self-reliant. Because at the end of the day, the nation can only become self-reliant if the people are self-reliant. And the people can be self-reliant. Ill people or people who are not feeling well or are not healthy cannot be self-reliant. So this combining of these two ideas is a very powerful one. And remember, that scheme that you just mentioned goes actually to the grassroots. It talks about interventions at district levels. It talks about, as you correctly pointed out, interventions at the research level. It talks about interventions at a level which begins from it sort of circulates the whole thing. It's a 360-degree intervention. It has insurance component, it has free medication healthcare component, it has a research component as intervention. And I would actually go one step further and connect this all to issues like clean drinking water. The budget talks about financing for, a greater financing for clean drinking water. It talks about another 100 million people who will benefit from the Ujjwala scheme, which is the cooking gas scheme. You would know that one of the biggest problems that Indian women have in many parts of the country is indoor pollution. So the Ujjwala scheme is a great solution to that indoor pollution problem. So in a sense, all these different aspects are being connected, and so that Atmanirbharta, the idea of self-reliance, the bare necessities for the idea of self-reliance can actually be put in place, which is why it's exciting.
Okay, Urvashi, if I bring you here on this aspect, PM Atmanirbhar Swasth Bharat Yojana, which earlier you were also referring to, would it be right to go ahead and say that, those linkages between the primary, secondary and tertiary healthcare systems, which we were talking about in the past 5-6 months as to where the focus should be in all these aspects, that is something which will be addressed, in a wholesome manner via this particular scheme?
Yes, I think, one thing that this scheme has brought out, which experts in the sector have been speaking for a long time, is that ultimately it's a continuum of care. You cannot think of the health system or, indeed even nutrition as sort of just distinct phases in which you intervene at the policy level. These are all connected to each other. So the fact that, in this scheme, we're going right from strengthening of the National Center for Disease Control, which does disease surveillance, which collects a lot of your health intelligence and data on the basis of which you can build effective policies. So it starts right from there. It then goes on to your health and wellness centers, which are, of course, an important pillar of Ayushman Bharat. But it talks of setting up additional health and wellness centers in both rural and urban areas. Then it moves on to your laboratories. Again, a very, very important part of the whole surveillance as well as diagnostic aspects. Then it comes to the actual hospitals, the medical colleges, the expansion of beds. So I think it is really looking at that whole continuum of care. Of course, it's a lot of work to do on the ground. It's one thing to allocate funding, but as we know, in a complex, diverse system like India, it's center states will need to work together to eventually make this into a reality. But I think as far as the vision goes, it's a very comprehensive and an interconnected vision. And I really like the emphasis on the wellness part, the well-being. Again and again, the finance minister also said health and well-being. That's very important from a signaling point of view, that we are not merely talking about treating or curing diseases, but we are talking about staying healthy and staying well. And I think that, combined with all the other efforts the government has been making in Ayush, etc., is also very, very important as we go forward. So I think this whole emphasis on bringing things together on the continuum of care, I think that was a very heartening takeaway from the budget today.
Indeed. Urvashi Prasad, one aspect that the budget also talks about is nutrition, and in that regard, the mission Poshan 2.0 is to be launched. That's what the finance minister announced. So help us understand what is going to be the strategy going forward to improve the nutritional outcomes, particularly if we talk about the aspirational districts of the country.
Yes, that's right. So, I think one very major part of the strategy is going to be identifying and focusing on those pockets where we have the most ground to cover. And I think it's in that context that the finance minister also emphasized the aspirational districts, because as we know that in those areas in particular, we've been lagging behind on health, nutrition, and related indicators. So using data, we are going to be identifying, and we have been as a part of the Poshan Abhiyan, identifying and intensifying our efforts in those pockets where we have the most ground to cover. And the NFHS survey results have also started to come out. So that's also going to help us to do just that, to identify where are we lagging behind. But we are going to go at more micro levels so that we can really target our interventions on those women, those children who really need it the most. So that's going to be one very big part of it, the data, the micro planning, the convergence of interventions between health, nutrition, water, sanitation, because again, as I said, health is not a silo. It is connected with all these areas. So eventually, the goal is to connect and converge interventions across these different sectors. And it's good that increasingly when we present the budget also, we talk about these one after the other, because these are very much interlinked.
Yes.
So that's going to be another piece of the strategy. The other is going to be use of technology. And of course, we've seen that the pandemic has really accelerated our adoption of technology. And that's an important piece of the whole nutrition strategy as well, equipping our frontline workers, others working in the system, other professionals with the necessary technology tools so that they can carry out real-time monitoring of health and nutrition outcomes, and we can intervene in a more timely fashion. And the fourth piece is going to be the community engagement. The Prime Minister has often spoken about making these areas into a Jan Andolan, because simply the government doing its interventions is not going to work. We need to have partnership with the community to bring about the desirable behavior changes. So that's going to be another very, very important piece of the strategy going forward.
Okay, definitely. That is quite important there, technology as well and communication aspects. Let me bring in Mr. Chikkarmani here. Chikkarmani जी, तकनीक की बात करें, अगर टेक्नोलॉजी की बात करें तो जिस तरह उर्वशी कह रही थी कि टेक्नोलॉजी का इस्तेमाल खासतौर पे हेल्थ सेक्टर की जो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर है और जो हम डिजिटल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की बात करते हैं, हेल्थ सेक्टर में किस तरह से डेटा का इस्तेमाल किया जा सकता है, आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस का इस्तेमाल किया जा सकता है, वो सब चीज़ें हैं जिनके ऊपर भविष्य में फोकस रहना जरूरी है। आपको लगता है उन सबको एड्रेस किया जा रहा है, ये जो पॉलिसी आई है या ये जो फोकस एरियाज हैं यहाँ पर उनके थ्रू?
मैं माफ़ी चाहूँगा, इस क्षेत्र का मैं ज़्यादा जानकार नहीं हूँ। इतना ही देख पाया हूँ कि आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस और इस प्रकार की जो नई टेक्नोलॉजीज आ रही हैं उसका वो प्रयोग करने की जिज्ञासा दिखाई है इस बजट ने। कैसे होता है, क्या होता है, आई एम सॉरी, इसके बारे में मैं ज्यादा जानता
Okay, let me bring in Hindol here. Hindol, your views there on the use of technology, as Urvashi was pointing out, technology is really, really important. And the way we are using digital tools to try and, make that health service reach to the last mile.
There are two or three things that are important to notice here. Number one, India has been one of the biggest adopters, in fact, one of the leading adopters of AI and machine learning technology in the world. During the COVID period, India led the world in the adoption of such tools. You have to connect that with India's processes and push towards getting digital technology at every level of governance. In fact, if you look at the way India, whether it's through the digital health ID, whether it's through digital education, at every level, a 360-degree framework is being created to deliver goods of governance through digital technology, including, of course, the direct benefit transfer and the UPI. India now leads the world as one of the fastest growing places in the world where the use of digital technology is being made to transfer government funds to beneficiaries.
Okay.
Now, all of this you have to add to a narrative point, which is that India is a place where only a few months ago, the government organized a major event focusing on the idea that AI should be used for social good. And you can see that these ideas are coagulating, in a sense, in the budgetary interventions so that more efficient use can be made of budgetary funds available to push forth more digital technology and the use of AI, machine learning in various aspects of the economy that will make them more efficient, make them more transparent, cut out middlemen, save thousands and thousands of crores of leakages and plug leakages in the dissemination of government funds and therefore overall better the economy.
Okay.
So
Certainly.
this entire framework, we are becoming in a sense a digital first nation. Even if you look at the World Economic Forum has an entire idea which says that countries that adopt digital technology at a mass level, grassroots onwards, actually benefit by getting more investments into the country at various levels.
Okay.
And we are actually seeing that in our country. Many of India's most interesting investments that have come into India in the recent past have been on the back of this digital intervention.
Okay.
So you have to put all of this into context when you look at such an intervention.
Okay, definitely.
Vishal, so after talking about technology, another aspect that we should touch upon, and this is one important aspect that concerns us every year, particularly those living in the national capital, is that of clean air. Mr. Chickermani, the government has allocated 2,217 crore rupees to tackle air pollution for 42 urban centers that have a million plus population. If we look at the problem of air pollution that year on year is only getting aggravated, is this sufficient or something more needs to be done in terms of allocation, in terms of more measures that the government should have announced?
As far as the budget goes, I think 2,000 crore is good enough. How it will be deployed, I don't have much idea. But speaking from the national capital, I don't think it's a question of money. I think it's a question of changing social habits, behaviors.
Okay.
The pollution in Delhi is partly because of the vehicles, partly because of the stubble burning. Are we ready to stop stubble burning? I don't know how much 2,000 crore will go into stopping that. Perhaps, as far as the national capital is concerned, if some new technology is developed that can take care of stubble burning, it will be much better use.
Okay.
There is no doubt that the pollution levels are very high and they need to be curbed. But I don't know, I'm not certain if money or budgeting for it will actually deliver the goods.
Okay.
I think it may create some innovation fund, it may create some thinking, some money would be spent here and there on some products. But India is too large. Delhi alone, I think 2,000 crore would be inadequate. If stubble burning can be stopped, Delhi is clean tomorrow.
Okay, definitely. These are the issues where not only, as Mr. Chickermani is pointing out, not only money and technology, but also public attitude is what also matters at the end of it all. So this is all about the health sector there, the theme being preventive, curative and well-being. Thank you so much, Mr. Hindol Sen Gupta and Mr. Gautam Chickermani, as well as Urvashi Prasad for sharing your views here with us. We'll take a short break, but on the other side, we will come back and talk about manufacturing, the rural economy and obviously taxation, which is important for all of us. So stay tuned to Rajya Sabha Television.